The sociologist John Galton proposed the conflict theory that is about the first part about the study of the peace. So in the negative word, it says that he wants to find way to reduce the human suffering and also the consequence of direct violence. In the second part, there is a positive study um, of the peace. He says that he wants to reduce the structural violence and cultural violence. For the other side, he says that it is in history and study of the development that it says about the project and the proposal to go beyond the human satisfaction. So he proposed that. He would remark three concepts that are the development as an opportunity to learning and also the important part of the relationships and the motivations that are in the conflicts. The second concept is about the peace. So in the peace, he want to highlight about the potential of the life, and the last one is the conflict that is a force motrice on the process and the development and the construction of the peace. Finally, he proposed that the conflict is a crisis and opportunity. Another definition that he made about it is that is a situation when two parts have different like objectives and that are incompatible. And also the conflicts, he says that really don't have a type of solution, but the conflicts make a transformation in the way. And finally is the relation of power that you can see in two parts. The sociologist John Galton proposed the conflict theory that is about, in the first part, about the study of the peace. So in the negative way, it says that he wants to find way to reduce the human suffering and also the consequence of direct violence. In the second part,
Maras and violence in El Salvador. What are Maras? The Maras are criminal organizations that emerged in Central America, mainly in El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, as a result of the mass deportation of young people from the United States in the 80s and 90s. The most notable groups are the Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18, which originally formed in Los Angeles and as a way to protect themselves from violence. Over time, they became more organized and aggressive. Types of violence, according to Galton. First, direct violence refers to intentional physical or psychological harm such as murder, assault, or torture. In El Salvador, this type of violence has historically been reflecting in high homicide rates and related criminal activities with groups locally known as maras. Criminal organizations like Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18 have been responsible for numerous violent acts that have severely impacted public safety. Official data shows that in 2015, El Salvador experienced a critical level of violence, recording 6,656 homicides, making it one of the most violent countries in the world. Nayib Bukele took office as president in 2019, has government significantly reduced the homicide rate. Second, structural violence. In El Salvador, according to Galton, structural violence doesn't manifest through direct physical aggression but exists within social, economic, and political structures, creating inequality and exclusion. In El Salvador, this has fueled the growth of gangs and crime. Some key examples include poverty and lack of opportunities. Despite some progress, many people still lack access to jobs, education, and basic services. Unemployment pushes young people toward illegal activities. Also, with institutions and corruption, a fragile judicial system and which spread corruption has have increased impunity and crime rates. Finally, prison conditions and social exclusion youth from marginally neighborhoods face stigma, limiting their opportunities and perpetuating cycles of violence. Third, cultural violence in El Salvador. Cultural violence refers to the narratives, values, beliefs, and ideologies that justify or reinforce both direct and structural violence. In El Salvador, security policies are commonly known as mano dura, a term widely used across Latin America. These policies were first introduced these 80s and 90s as a response to rising crime rates, according to historical data. The core premise was to establish law and order through highly concerned governments. Since taking office in 2019, President Nayib Bukele has implemented the Territorial Control Plan to combat violence and reclaim gun control areas. This plan has included measures such as deploying security forces in high crime zones and constructing a massive prison with a capacity for 40,000 inmates. By 2022, the country's homicide rate had dropped to 7.8 per 100,000 inhabitants, the lowest in decades. However, human rights organizations have raised concerns over potential human rights violations, including arbitrary arrests and inhumane prison conditions. Third, cultural violence in El Salvador. Cultural violence refers to the narratives, values, beliefs, and ideologies that justify or reinforce both direct and structural violence. In El Salvador, security policies are commonly known as mano dura, a term widely used across Latin America. These policies were first introduced in the 80s and 90s as a response to rising crime rates, according to historical data. The core premise was to establish law and order through highly concerned governments. Since taking office in 2019, President Nayib Bukele has implemented the dimension of conflict in El Salvador. The conflict in El Salvador involves the government against the civilian population and the media. The government has implemented mano dura policies to combat violence and strategy that has received both support and criticism. Gangs formed by deported migrants from the United States involved into powerful criminal organizations. And civilians are the most affected, and crime is perceived as the country's biggest problem. The media have reinforced the government's narrative and contributed to the stigmatization of gangs. Between 2002 and 2006, the perception of crime as the main issue rose from 18.3% to 47%, driven by media and government strategies that fueled fear. This has justified increasingly repressive policies, creating a climate of oppression. Gangs originated in the United States, and after their members were deported, they found a fragile El Salvador, where they expanded their control. The government's response has been repression, failing to address the problems and structural causes.
In the way to make a solution, Galton proposed three basic needs. The first one is the empathy to solve maybe the attitude. The second one is about non-violence to smooth the behavior. And the last one is about the creativity to make things above the contradictions. And also, he proposed three ways to solve it. That is, the first one, the negotiation, when the two parts involved in the conflict try to make a dialogue and find objective or maybe a solution that beneficiates the both. And the second is the mediation, and that is when a third part creates an agreement. And the last one is the transformation of the conflict. This one is about to go furthermore of the conflict and try to change the things that create it. In this special event of Salvador and also the things illegal that makes the Maras group, the government proposed a way to resolve it that is like a plan with five points that he tried to do year by year. The phase one is about the preparation. In this part, he tried to get again the territory that was controlled by this illegal group, and the second part is about the opportunity, and this one have the objective to develop like opportunities and also better scenarios to the young people, and also make like a type of prevention about that they could be like kept up with this group. And the third part is about the modernization. In this part, the president of Salvador tried to make a strong force in the way of security, and he starts to have more technology and also have to put in the process more advanced like armament to control it. The fourth part is about the incursion that makes a duplicity of the things of the armed force to try to have again the territory where people or illegal people was. This final part is about the extraction of criminal people, where the president established that he wants to localize and also make a capture about this group, this illegal group, and also try to get the installation of a big security group that helps with that proposal. The other phases he didn't talk about it, but we can see that he made the negotiation. That is not a direct way to find a resolution with this group, and also the negotiation where we can see that maybe under international systems get involved to make like a type of guarantee of human rights. And the last one, that is a transformation when he gets these rules and also these steps to solve the conflict about the maras in Salvador.
Galton makes a difference between negative peace, which is the absence of direct violence, and positive peace, which implies the eradication of the structural cause that generate conflict, such as inequality, exclusion, and injustice. In the context of El Salvador, although Bukele's territorial control plan has reduced homicides and visible violence through repressive measures, this approach is more aligned with a negative peace. So, to achieve positive and sustainable peace, it is necessary to transform the social and economic structure that fit the cycle of violence. First, reintegration of former gang members. Galton says structural violence, such as lack of access to education and employment, creates conditions that perpetuate criminality. The current policy of mass imprisonment may reduce direct violence in the short term, but without viable alternatives, the problem will persist. So, education, skills, training, and employment programs can allow former gang members to break away from criminality. Second, human rights approach to security. Galton's positive piece talks about how repression alone doesn't guarantee stability if human rights are not um, respected. So there are reports of violations of fundamental rights in detentions in El Salvador. So it is necessary to implement control, transparency, and supervision mechanisms over the Salvadoran security force, reducing abuse and strengthening the authority of the state. Third, modifying the judicial system of fighting corruption. Galton points out that positive peace is based on fair and reliable institutions. Corruption and impunity in the Salvadoran judicial system have weakened to the rule of law, affecting citizens' confidence. So, to guarantee effective justice, the purification and training of judges and prosecutors is required, as well as mechanisms to prevent the abuse of power. Third, modifying the judicial system of fighting corruption. Galton points out that positive peace is based on fair and reliable institutions. Corruption and impunity in the. In conclusion, Bukele's territorial control plan has reduced homicides in El Salvador through a repressive approach, achieving a negative peace. However, to achieve a positive peace, according to Galton, it is necessary to address the structural cause of the conflict, such as inequality and exclusion. Gang violence relate to the civil war and the deportation of gang members from the USA reflects the persistence of these conditions. To achieve sustainable peace, current measures must be complemented with social reintegration programs, including education and employment for former gang members and a human rights approach.